Hello, everybody, it's your boy, Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, here today to talk about the future of Xenoblade Chronicles as a series. Let's get right into it, shall we? So I think it's safe to say that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was a success, and that as a franchise, Xenoblade as a whole is trending in the right direction. So where's it going? Well, let's talk about the releases of Xenoblade up to this point and see if we can glean some kind of pattern from it. Luckily, Wikipedia is coming in with the freaking goat carry right here by having a timeline of all the releases. I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Xenoblade Chronicles page. It's right there. But in 2010, we had Xenoblade Chronicles release. 2015, we had Xenoblade Chronicles 3D and Xenoblade Chronicles X. Then in 2017, we had 2 come out. 2018 brought us Torna. 2020 was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. 2022 was, of course, Banjo-Kazooie 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And going off of this, the general flow of the series seems to be one mainline numbered game like 1, 2, and 3, preceded by 2 non-mainline releases. Between Xenoblade 1 and 2, we had 3D and X. Between 2 and 3, we had Torna as DLC for 2, and the Definitive Edition for Xenoblade 1. We already know that we are getting a DLC for Xenoblade 3 that is at least or around Torna length next year. So that's one of the already established 2 releases between numbered entries. The question becomes, what is that other title? Or do they break this pattern and just go straight to 4? And I don't think they will break the pattern, and I will assume they won't for the purposes of this video. And I'll just rip the band-aid off right now. I think that other release that will tide us over to Xenoblade 4, and I may be on full hopium for this. More hopium than there is hydrogen in the freaking sun. More hopium than every star in a galaxy, or every grain of sand on a beach, or for every light bulb across all of the earth. But I think that the other release that will tide us over to Xenoblade 4 will be Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. It's the one title not easily accessible in Xenoblade, or at least on the Switch, that from my experience with polling on this channel and with other comments that I've gotten, granted I'm a small channel, but still, Xenoblade X seems to be a requested game. And the game itself is so easily marketable that it honestly hurts. It's a giant, beautiful world with cool aesthetics, giant monsters, and freaking pilotable mechs called Skells, and arguably one of, if not the best, OST in the series. That may be a hot take, but it honestly depends on your musical preferences, since it's a bit different from the other games. Look, let's be honest with all of ourselves. If you blare Uncontrollable or The Way in a trailer or something, and I'm not joking you will probably have people on the edge of their seats wanting to play this game. And I'm not a game engineer, full disclosure, but the game world already exists. So unless their back-end code looks like my cable management, it's not like they would have to completely design it from scratch. The biggest hurdle would be porting the overworld mechanics from the Wii U pad to the Switch, which you could theoretically just do with a button prompt to bring up the map, do what you need, and just press it again to minimize it if you want. With a little bit of creativity, there's ways around that in my opinion. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, in Xenoblade X, one of the core mechanics was because it was on the Wii U. And the Wii U came with a gamepad, essentially a giant tablet. Imagine an undocked Switch that was always on for you. And they put the overworld map on it and broke the map up into little hexagonal chunks that you could plant nodes on to passively generate resources for you. You could use it for navigation, toggle it to different modes to get different information out of it. It was really convenient, and honestly, one of the reasons that I loved the game and the Wii U as a whole. It felt like I was an explorer going to an uncharted land, and all I had was my map right next to me that I had to constantly check over and see where I'm going and correlate it. It was a really nice kinetic feeling you got with the game. But that just won't be possible with the Switch, but there's ways around that, where you may not be able to adapt that feeling of it, but you can at least adapt the mechanics of it. On top of that, a definitive edition for Xenoblade Chronicles X would be a good excuse for Monolith to revisit the UI as a whole, since it's wildly inconvenient and convoluted most of the time. You streamline the UI, integrate the gamepad map to the Switch with like a button prompt that brings it up quickly, up the visual fidelity a tad, and heck, if they want, they could even do a feature connected for it and add to the story. They would have a really well-received game on their hands, in my opinion. Sure, Xenoblade X doesn't have the best story in the franchise, it's honestly probably the weakest. But we're talking about a series that has some of the best stories in all of gaming, in my opinion. And I still think the narrative of Xenoblade X is compelling enough. But its main strengths, what makes it unique and different to the other entries in the series, lie in other areas, namely the gameplay and open world exploration, so I still think it would be well received in its own right. And I know it's a bit of a meme that Monolith have forgot about X outside of the one DLC for 2, and will never get a port of it, but I do genuinely believe a definitive edition or something for Xenoblade Chronicles X is likely to fill in the gap between the 3 DLC and the release of Xenoblade 4. And if we want to talk about timing, I think following the Xenoblade 2-3 release date pattern will be the play. So probably 2 years from the 3 DLC, we'll get the theoretical definitive edition for Xenoblade X, and then 2 more years after that for Xenoblade 4. So that's what I think the release schedule will be. But what about the story? I have covered this before, but upon even more reflecting on it all, for the Xenoblade 3 DLC, I think the safe bet is a Founder's prequel story. But Monolith likes to mess with our expectations, so they could do a follow-up, with the whole theme of 3 being to move on from the present and the past, and to walk into the future. I think a sequel would be more fitting, and there's other ways you can work that Founder's Room into a sequel. So my heart says sequel, and the risky part of my brain says sequel, but my Vegas odds part of my brain says safe bet is Founder's prequel. I am way less indecisive when it comes to Xenoblade 4. I am convinced it will be a narrative centering around rejoining the 2 worlds, but in a non-destructive or non-self-destructive way this time, and the plot will be about 2 foreign entities finding a way to work together and come together for the common good. There's an old interview they released right before Xenoblade 3 came out that I'll leave a link to in the description down below. And when you read that, they really like the idea and concept of foreign entities becoming one. So I think in Xenoblade 4, the idea will be to have these 2 worlds come together for the common good. Now, the cast could be and probably will be entirely new characters, but I think having Noah and Mio play a role similar to Nia and Melia from Xenoblade 3 is possible. And I'd argue probable, because let's talk my other theory for Xenoblade 4. I think it's very likely that Xenoblade 4 is a dual perspective narrative. Either it takes place in another mashup world like Ionius, or it takes place in the new world of the Bionis and Ulvest, which I feel is far more likely. New locations, but still plenty of opportunity for throwbacks. We got a sneak peek of the new world of the Bionis with the intro and outro of Xenoblade 3, but also future connected. There's so much more that they can do with that, and I don't see them not doing that. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I could easily see a main mechanic be based on us channeling the spirits of the other world's party to do certain attacks. Maybe it's an iteration on the interlink mechanic, while the game has us exploring 2 worlds to find some answer to bring them together. Hell, you could even use a tagline like 2 worlds, 1 story, if you really want to. I feel like if the Xenoblade 3 DLC is a sequel, and if it is, I'd imagine it would be about us re-establishing communication between the 2 worlds, which could lead us to that new interlink mechanic that I was talking about. Have us learn more about this light mechanic that they introduced with Xenoblade 3. If I was writing Xenoblade from here on out, that's how I would do it. Having the narrative culminate with the rejoining of the worlds properly after the beginning of the series started with Klaus separating them. I just feel that it's poetic and a great way to wrap up everything. And I've made a separate video on this topic, but there's a little microcosm. There's actually 2 from Xenoblade 1 and 2 that, if this theory does come to pass, could be seen as excellent foreshadowing. At the end of Xenoblade 2, you had that scene of Klaus putting Vex in that dream world with Pyra and Mithra, and having Rex essentially break down because he knows it's not real and that the happiness he is having at that moment is coming at the expense of everyone else. And at the end of Xenoblade 1, and I mean at the very end, when Shulk essentially becomes God, he has the choice to make a world of his own design or throw it away to create a world without gods. In that moment, even Alva says, hey, this isn't real, this is your own kind of dream world, but you can be happy here. Or do you want to go about the way that'll be more difficult but more beneficial for everyone in the long run by giving them the freedom of choice? He elects to do that. Rex elected to go out of the dream world. Well, he didn't say that, but you knew he wanted to. And then the rest of the narrative was about achieving your dreams and finding happiness after doing what is needed. And if you extrapolate those two stories and blow them up onto the entire timeline of Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4, then it can make sense and it kind of fits how you had Xenoblade 1 and 2 being their own things. They come together with Xenoblade 3, but because of Ionios and because it's created out of the fears and trepidations of the people there, with having to use Origin, it's inherently self-destructive and they don't have a sustainable way to achieve this end happiness that they want. It's a fake-out. It's not real. It's a selfish happiness built on the backs of everyone else's suffering. And foregoing that kind of selfish happiness in the immediate future to create a harder to obtain, but obtainable nonetheless happiness to achieve your dreams, find your Elysium in the future, is one of the core ideas behind the series. They did it with 1, they did it with 2, and they've done most of the story for 3. It's just 3, it seems to be, hey, we have to throw this all away right now, and then they almost beat you in the back of the head with the idea, hey, we're gonna find each other again, don't worry. Hell, the last lines of pretty much every character is essentially saying, we will find each other again. Then you have the last save screen of Xenoblade 3, with Mio saying, we'll find each other again. To paraphrase. So if I'm writing Xenoblade 4, you can write it in such a way where the entire narrative arc of Xenoblade Chronicles as a whole could be seen as one big Xenoblade story, because it follows the same patterns. Fighting to achieve your dreams, being given a temporary happiness, an easy way out, but having to forego that to do what is actually needed to find that true, permanent happiness through giving people that ability to choose for their own selves what they want their future to be. And I feel that if that's the way they go with Xenoblade 4, that it would be very poetic. Hell, there's another possibility here where they don't even achieve that in Xenoblade 4. They attempt to do that, but they would need like a Xenoblade 5 to finish it. I don't think that's what they would do, but it's possible. And I honestly just think that would be a great way to wrap everything up, to bring it all together. Make the Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, 4 arc kind of feel like an overarching Xenoblade Chronicles plotline itself. And then from that, you could use that new world you create to tell completely new and interesting stories from here on to continue the Xenoblade series. And before we wrap up, I think it's an important thing to keep in mind with theory crafting is it's just that. It's a bunch of theories. They could have wildly different ideas or thoughts from what I've had. And maybe they've elected to do something else. Maybe they thought of what I've said here. They probably have, and they've just elected to do something else. That's fine. They're the writers. This is their story for them to tell. And honestly, all 3 mainline Xenoblade games are my top 10 games of all time. I trust their writing team to tell a compelling story regardless. And more than anything, I'm just so curious where they're going to go from here for the series from here on out. And I feel like we'll get a lot of insight into what that direction is the second we get the first reveal trailer for the DLC story. So I'm going to call the video there for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts, your opinions on my theories for the future of Xenoblade Chronicles. How do you feel about a Xenoblade X Definitive Edition? How do you feel about my ideas for the Xenoblade 3 DLC and for Xenoblade 4? Do you have any of your own? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts, positive or negative. Let me know. I'd love to hear them and just hear what you're overall thinking about, how you're feeling with the series going into the future. Anything you really want to see, anything you want to see them address or touch upon, let me know. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody.